I was going to be a cop at first. I wanted to take criminal justice, and then it just didn't sit with me. I didn't really like it as much. 15 years later, I ended up working as a producer, but as the digital for internet.
Right. So where do you win the Emmy for?
So that was for the Oscars digital. It was Oscars All Access is what it was called. So it aired on Facebook Live, and it was a companion show so that if you're watching the Oscars, you could also on your Facebook have this up, and we'll have the backstage thank you cam. So, if they do their speech and when they come off the stage, they still have time to do more speech. So that's our show would feature backstage cam and behind the scenes camera, stuff like that. It was just extra. If you really wanted to participate in the Oscars, you can do that.
Welcome to the Paco's Place podcast.
Visit abaeservices.com for fast medical transcription service. This podcast episode is brought to you by AB Music Creative.
And the podcast will begin in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Augie Max.
Thank you. Thank you to Paco for having me. Appreciate it.
Award winner, technically the first. Oh my God.
Technically.
Mark, we love you. You directed the Oscars.
Produced. So I produced.
You produced it.
Yeah, I've been involved producing the digital show for the Oscars. That's something I did for about 7 or so years. I actually got my start doing the Oscars as a production assistant in 2000.
So you started at the bottom?
Very bottom. Yeah, I started working as a PA, production assistant, getting dry cleaning, getting food, getting donuts, whatever you had to do at the bottom stages. So that's where I got my start working at the Oscars. And then I ended up working as a producer about 15 years later on the show. Yeah, but as the digital for internet.
Right.
Presentation.
So where do you win the Emmy for?
So that was for the Oscars digital. It was Oscars All Access is what it was called. So it aired on Facebook Live, and it was a companion show so that if you're watching the Oscars, you could also on your Facebook have this up, and we'll have the backstage thank you cam. So, if they do their speech and when they come off the stage, they still have time to do more speech. So that's our show would feature backstage cam and behind the scenes camera, stuff like that. It was just extra. If you really wanted to participate in the Oscars, you can do that.
Galing. Whose idea was it?
I'm not 100% sure. I think it was just something that evolved, just like with anything in this modern day. There's always a social component, right? If you're doing a show, there's your tweets and your posting. So I think this was just a natural progression of the evolution of the Oscars into the digital format. So I'm not sure who did it, but I got brought on.
Okay, when was this? When did it start, the whole digital thing?
Oh, gosh. Well, I got brought on, I think, in 2015. And I think they might have started it the year before that, possibly. So it wasn't until like the latter, 2010s that at least this particular version of the show started. And that's when they brought me on.
And you've been with the Oscars ever since?
Well, no. So up until the pandemic. So when the pandemic came, everything changed, right? All the show formats changed a little bit, and so that was one of the casualties, unfortunately, after the pandemic. That show went away. I still do other things for the Academy, which is the organization that puts on the Oscars. I produce a show called the SciTech Awards, and that is, it's not televised as an event to the public, but when you watch the Oscars, they'll show you a little package. They'll say, last week at the Beverly Wilshire in Beverly Hills, we presented these awards, and that show is for all the technical achievement in film. So like the green screen techniques, the rain bar that they'll put above your head to create rain, horse puppet, all the little things you don't realize that you need to make a film from a technical standpoint. Even software, just software that allows you to share cuts with directors and producers, stuff like that. That show is all about technical achievement. And so I produced that for the Oscars for the last 6 years. So I've been involved with the organization for the last 20 years in various capacities.
How about the Will Smith, Chris Rock?
I was not there. I was at home. I was not there. I was at home watching that, and it was funny because we watched.
What was your reaction though? When
So it's funny because I was watching it late. We started late, and so I'm watching it with my wife, and I start getting these text messages like, "Is this for real? Is this was this staged?" And I'm like, "I don't know what's gonna happen. Something's gonna happen in the next couple of minutes." And then so we finally got to that point, and it looked like they did a censor, so wasn't sure exactly what happened, but you could tell like it was not planned. This is not at least, I don't think it was planned based on what
you still
happened.
don't think it was planned?
No, if it was planned, then it wasn't made aware to a lot of people. It's one of those.
Because remember
things
that
where,
Eminem landing, that Sacha Baron Cohen landing on Eminem. Was that?
I think that
was staged, right?
I think that's the sort of stuff that I didn't work on that show, but I'm gonna guess that was a staged element.
Okay.
But I don't think the Will Smith situation was necessarily staged. I think it was just a really bad situation that unfortunately happened. But it's amazing because that was almost 2 years ago now, and so we've moved on so much from it. Chris Rock's already had his special about it, and but
that's why I was like, imagine a lot of content from that slap.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's the funny thing about shows is sometimes they don't even get recognized unless something like that happens on it. Because like, for example, last year's show of the Oscars, it was great. It was actually a really well produced show, but nothing dramatic happened.
No talk.
No moonlight incident, the La La Land moonlight, no slap. No. So sometimes it's like, you could produce a great show, but nobody's going to care because there was no controversy that came from it. So,
but what was your take with regard to controversy? Are you for it, against it?
I mean, in that case, nobody wants to see. Listen, I like UFC. I like martial arts. I like it in its appropriate place.
It has to be in context.
Yeah, but at an award show where you're all dressed to the nines, you're supposed to be celebrating each other. It was just a bad decision, It was a really bad decision for him, unfortunately. And, I don't think that situation was good, but, it's unfortunately just what happened. It was the circumstances that built up, and luckily at this point, I think for the most part, I mean, he's still kind of reeling from it from his career, right? But we've all kind of moved on to the next controversies. So
now, being in show business, has this always been your dream? Like, are you living your dream or?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I am definitely living my dream. I don't know if it was something that originally, like when I was younger, I didn't know I was going to go down the path. Like I remember, I think one of the first times I remember even entertaining the idea of being like a storyteller was when my parents bought a -1. Okay, so we had the -1. For those of you who don't know what the -1 is, it's a speaker with two cassettes, and it was for karaoke for the most part. But my parents bought it for karaoke for them, but I remember
was that here in the States or in the
this
Philippines?
was here in the States, yeah, because I was born out here, and I remember them buying it, and I was like, what is this? And I started kind of playing with it and doing recording, and I remember doing kind of like Orson Welles' War of the World. I remember doing like this, I was very improvisational and just kind of telling this story of this thing, and I remember that was one of the first times that I did something like that, and I was like, this is fun, this is interesting, and then I did it. Then my parents bought, the camcorder.
Yes.
So they would have me record the batch reunions, the class reunions that they would have, and the family reunions and stuff. So I got used to using the
big
equipment.
ones.
Yeah, the one that you had to put on the shoulder with the VHS you put in. So I would do that, and then so I was like, oh, this is fun. And then my kuya and I would make home movies. We used to make, before the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we did our own cinematic universe in our garage. And my kuya would always be the star, and I would be the guy who would get, they would kill at the beginning, because there needed to be like a vengeance plot, right? So he would either be Punisher or Batman, and I would be the person who, like the security guard who gets killed, or the friend who gets killed. killed. And so then I would then become the cameraman to film the rest of it, and then my brother would be the star, and then our friend, whatever friend we could drag into the day, that particular day, we would make those. So that was another time when I was like, oh, this is fun.
You never thought about being in front of the camera?
No, you know what? A little bit I thought about it.
I mean, because you've got the looks, you've got the height.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, no, I've been told that, you know, when I was younger, my mom would occasionally joke with us and say, oh, you look like Tom Cruise, artista ka na, sige na, or PBA, you know, one of those things. But it was always like, it didn't feel right for me.
For the record, for everybody watching, how tall are you?
I'm 6'1 3/4. So
See?
6'2 is what I bill myself at.
Richard Gomez height yun, Brad. Tall, dark, and handsome.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm taller than most, but I just didn't think about it. I also kind of saw, growing up, I saw a lot of the pitfalls that getting into showbiz, at least from the on-camera standpoint. But I remember taking a drama class in college when I went to Mount San Antonio College here in Walnut, and one of my drama teacher was like, "Oh, you're pretty good. You should look into this." And I just didn't. It wasn't in my heart at the moment. I was having so much fun doing the behind the scenes stuff. And
were you born and raised in LA?
I was born in Dallas.
Okay.
So both my parents came from the Philippines, and I was born in Dallas. My mother, unfortunately, she got in a car accident right after she had me. So they sent me to the Philippines. So I lived in the Philippines from, I think it was 6 or 8 months old. They sent me there, and then I lived there till about 4 years old.
Wait, your mom just had a car accident?
She was so both my parents have passed since, but this was in the 78 when I was born. She was driving in Texas. I think it was black ice because there's a lot of that sort of stuff over there, and I think she hit like a semi or something, and so she was just not in the best shape to be raising a child.
So 8 months you were shipped to the Philippines.
Yeah, shipped to the Philippines, and luckily for me, I had a lot of family there. My dad was from a family of 10 kids.
Oh, nice.
You know, and then my mom's very similar. I think it was like 9 or
daming
8.
cousins.
Oh, dami talaga. So it was like, it was great because I got to go and live with, you know, family still. It wasn't like, you know, was separated, but it was just a different experience. I think it was about somewhere around 4 years old. And then I came back to the States, and then we lived in Burbank, California.
And the reason why I'm asking, there are people in the Philippines, in Asia, in the Middle East, people watching this podcast who aspire to be in Hollywood, right? How does it feel knowing full well that this is Burbank and you're just like a mile, 2 miles, 3 miles away from the studios? Did you take it for granted? Did you feel grateful that you were that close to the kingdom?
Yeah, no, I really, I don't think I appreciated it as much until later when I realized, oh wow, I'm right there, you know. And we used to go to Universal Studios all the time. So like I had Universal Studios, they had the Warner Brothers Studios, Disney, it was all kind of there. And I remember one of the first experiences I had was seeing, they were taping the A-Team. So Mr. T is there, and it was on what's now San Fernando Road in Burbank by the mall. And at the time they dressed it up to be like look like the scene from Vietnam. They were shooting the scene, and so he was there. And I remember my mom bringing me there, and I was so close. He was probably like as far as where, you know, Michael is right now, and I was like, wow, like it was one of those things where they're real, you know, they're real, and it leveled the playing field a little bit for me. And then just more and more the exposure, you know, whether it was Universal Studios or whether it was like, for example, one of my classmates had a dad who was a character actor, and so he came and hosted our talent show one year. So it was always getting kind of this additional exposure. And then in high school, I remember we had a Rick Chambers, who was a news anchor. He came to our school, so I got to see him, and so the proximity helps. It helps because it really makes you at least be more open to like, oh my gosh, like I'm this close to it, you know. Like the other day I was, just a couple of different times I run into like Sebastian Stan I saw the other day at some restaurant, and Joe Manganiello, and they're like in proximity. So it's one of those things where, you know, and that's why I love living out here because you get those kind of random interactions. So yeah, it benefits for sure to be here. It helps with the confidence of like, yeah, I can get in because it's right there.
Now, with that confidence and that mindset of, yeah, I can get in, when did that thought come to your mind?
Yeah, for me, it wasn't until college. So I was here in Mount San Antonio College, and I had already graduated high school, but I was a bad student, so I didn't have a direction. I didn't have kind of the route I wanted to take.
Nursing, no.
No. My mom wanted me to because my mom was a nurse, but it was just not. It wasn't something I was interested in, and we were latchkey kids, so we watched a lot of TV growing up. Saturday morning cartoons and just all of it.
Did they have Saturday Fun Machine over here?
I don't.
Remember we had that Satfuma Saturday
was
Fun
that in the
Machine.
Philippines?
Yeah, the Archies. The Archies, Justice League,
Okay, I'm sure it's a lot of the
everything.
same stuff. Yeah, which is funny because kids don't have that now because they don't do Saturday morning cartoons. But that was like, we used to watch TV so much, so it was one of those things where like it was always in the back of my head. And then when I started going to college, I remember I was going to be a cop at first. I wanted to take criminal justice, and then it just didn't sit with me. I didn't really like it as much. And then I took a break. I took like a semester break, and I started trying to work. I worked in computers. I worked in cable networking, like when you run cables through roofs and stuff for offices. And I just kind of started thinking about it.
Wait, that's after college?
This was like a semester into college. I'd basically kind of taken general ed, and I was just like, I was uninspired. It was just, I didn't know what I wanted. And then I took that semester off and kind of just tried to earn some money. And then I was like, I got to go back. And now I thought about it a little bit. I kind of remembered all those things that I mentioned to you before, like when I was growing up, things I liked to do. And so I was like, let me try it out. I remember looking at the Mount Sac curriculum, and I was like, oh, there's television courses. So let me try that out. So I just went back to school. I just took TV production. I didn't take anything else. I didn't take history, Spanish, nothing. It was just focused on TV production. And I did that for like 2.5 straight years, and just did a lot of anything I could do.
What did your parents say when you did this?
I think they were just happy I was
in school.
In school, yeah, because in high school I did get into some stuff, and I remember getting arrested during like I think it was like between my sophomore and junior year. So I think they were just like, listen, as long as he's going to school, and I don't think they were 100% sold on it as a career, because just it's not something that most of our community kind of pushes, which is interesting because I look back and I actually have family members who were on camera talent in the Philippines. Evelyn Vargas was a comedian.
Yes.
Yeah, she's my I guess tita, or I'm not,
oh my God, really?
And then I have a cousin, Ray Bihar, he's a contribida in a lot of Ronnie Ricketts movies. So I had like these family members who were in front of camera, but for whatever reason, it just wasn't something that my family pushed on me. And then this just happened organically. And then, I was doing it. And next thing you know, by the end of my school time, which was 1999, I got an internship, and I just started working. I started driving into Hollywood and working on projects. So
when you got there, was it what you expected it to be? Was it glamorous?
Not the first project I worked on. The first project I worked on was docuseries. So it was a lot of like, the first show I think I did was called Conspiracy Theories. And it was me, like literally I was staying up late transcribing these interviews. Yeah, so you're just typing, you're typing, you're listening. Yeah, and so that was the first job. Very not glamorous at all. I'm listening to some, expert talk about the JFK assassination. So that was the first gig I did. Then the next one I did was similar, but it was about.
Were you doing this for SRT files, like for transfer for closed caption?
No, it was just more for so that the editor. No, it was so that when you look at as an editor or as a producer, you look at the script and you can make cuts easier because it's on paper. So it's more for that. Oh my God. So I'm doing that late night, and then the next project, same thing. It was docuseries. It wasn't glamorous at all. But when I finished that project, one of the guys I was working with, he had done award shows. He had just done a big award show. I forget which one. And he was like, oh my gosh, you got to get on these shows. Like they're all dressed up. You know, you get to see all the like beautiful. He called out Leanne Rimes because I think he had a crush on her or something. But he's like, yeah, Leanne Rimes, and I was like, oh, this sounds fun, you know. And I had already kind of come from a live background, because when I was at Mount Sac, we were shooting news, sports, anything, concerts, and you have to learn it all. I mean, and that's the thing. That's the best time to really decide like what you want to do, is like do everything and see what makes you kind of like, oh, I really like doing this, you know. And for me, I really liked doing everything.
And then the live thing, at least that's more spontaneous than being in a room just transcribing what has been.
Yeah, there's something about live television that it's its own kind of fix. If you're somebody who was like an adrenaline junkie, it's got its thing, because you know once the
on
you go,
air, right?
Yeah, once you're on air, once that you're going, and whatever happens, whether it's a slap, whether it's a misread announcement, that's what's happening, and there's something about that's very attractive for at least a lot of my colleagues and myself, because we keep doing it over and over and over again. So, but it's fun. It's fun to have a different office literally every month. I'm doing a new project, working with new people, working with new clients, working with different IP.
You like it that way?
I like it that way because it's always different, you know. I've just never really done anything else. So for me, like I like the fact that, for example, right now I'm working on a strike benefit show, and I'm getting to just research kind of telethons and how you do a telethon properly to earn money and raise money. Whereas the last thing I did was Miss USA, which is a completely different, thing, a different presentation, all that. But it's just a new problem to solve. So I'm always excited about just solving a new problem.
So you're saying every month you're at the new environment. So there is uncertainty, but you've been used to this uncertainty. Is it safe to say that your uncertainty has become certainly securely easy to deal with?
Yeah, I mean, it's not, I wouldn't say easy to deal with. I would just say it's I'm used to it now. And I'm confident that I can solve the problems that are usually presented in our space. And I enjoy it. I enjoy the challenge of trying to solve the problem of like, how are we going to get through this situation that we're being presented.
But how did you get the break to be the problem solver? How did you come to that?
Yeah, I mean, it took a while. I mean, I'm still in the process of working my way up to that. But I've done it now on a handful of shows where I'm either the showrunner or the final kind of say in things, It takes a while. You have to earn a lot of trust. You have to gain a lot of confidence in yourself so that you can be put in those situations where you're, for example, this last show, Miss USA, it's a live broadcast and you have to get off the air on time. So they tell you it's 2 hours, it's 2 hours. You don't get 2 hours in 1 minute. Yeah. So, we had there was a possibility that if we didn't get off on air on time, then you don't see the crowning of the right. Miss USA. So that's a challenge. That's a very interesting challenge. And it's something that, some of the veterans in our industry have been doing for years, but not everybody can do it. And so I watched a lot of the best do that, and I learned from them, and we were able to do it on our show. And but it's one of those challenges where it's like you have to build your way up to that, and it took years. I mean, I've been in the industry 20 years now.
So you still have nerves?
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent. I mean, there's nervousness, but it's nothing that is gonna stop me from doing my job.
Is it more nerve-wracking during the countdown, or in the middle of the show, or toward the end of the show where you're counting down the time?
Yeah, it depends. Before a show starts, it just depends on where you're at. Like, depends on like how prepared you are. If we've had rehearsal, if we've gotten, we have room to breathe, okay, it's all right, we'll get through it. But then if you're like, oh, we didn't get to rehearse this, we didn't get to rehearse this, we don't know, then it becomes a little bit more nerve-wracking. But I think it's one of those things where if you probably like with you with shows now, right? When you go up in front of an audience, there's a level of like, nervousness, but you're like, we've done this before, or we're going to do it, again. So it's kind of like that now at this point where it's like, I've done it before in various other capacities. So it's like, it's going to be fine.
Now, how long do you see yourself doing this though?
Gosh, I mean, until they kick me out,
Really? It's that fun, huh?
I like, I guess you can call it storytelling, or you can call it content whatever the buzz, I just like creating content, and it's fun. It's really not that physically taxing. The hours can be draining sometimes. But I'm not like out there doing a fight training or anything. It's it's just something that I still enjoy. I'm sure at some point there's going to be a time when I'm going to be too old and they're not going to want to hire me for the shows that I want to work on. But I have like exit strategy plans. I'm building on different things, and I always want to be able to talk about it. Like one of the things I do now is public speaking for colleges, and I talk to students about, my experience and the mistakes I've made and watched other people make, but also the things that you should do right to get through. So that's kind of like, that'll be my transition once they stop calling me. But for now, I'm doing all right. So
how hard are you on yourself when you make mistakes?
Yeah, I mean, I try not to beat myself up. I'm a big believer of trying to be positive and not too negative, especially when it comes to like talking to yourself. You don't want to be cursing at yourself. And every now and then I'll get down, but then it's like I'm also just like, you have to move forward.
But how do you do that? Like, how do you let go? Because of course, when you're doing a show, it's your baby, right? And you want everything to go on, especially if you're the showrunner. Mm-hmm. You want every member of your crew to be doing what they're supposed to be doing. And sometimes there's patience, but there are times when stress gets in the way, you become impatient. But when it's your responsibility and mistakes happen, when do you let it go? And if you have a hard time letting it go, how do you internalize it, and how do you throw the garbage out?
Yeah, I mean, like there were definitely things about this last show that I did that I would have liked to have done better, right?
With the Miss USA?
Yeah, so Miss USA, there was like one instance when we were, trying to get down to the final act. And, you can kind of put certain amount of time where you want it to. I wish like, I could have put more time at the end when they crown her, and then she comes back and all the girls hug her. And I put too much time on the front end, and it was just kind of a last second decision because we only had literally seconds to make this decision. I said, okay, put the time here. So then I watched it later and I was like, I wish I'd done this instead. But I'm just, I don't want to ever be kind of weighed by things from the past too much. You want to learn from it, and I will next time we do it. I'll know, okay, I'm going to put this much time in that segment and not take that away. And but I can't let that drag me down, because if I'm like sulking about it and like, I could have been better, then that doesn't do anything for me from a mental standpoint. Like you have to move forward. You have to say, okay, well, what did we do wrong? All right, we're going to fix that the next time. And so that's just kind of how I think now. I try not to let myself get down, depressed about a mistake. But it happens, it definitely happens. And there have been times in my past where I've made mistakes where I beat myself up about it, but there's only so much you can do. So you could fine, have a level of like feeling bad about it, but don't let it weigh you down.
Now, this career that you have, was the Emmy Award, was that you have, was that more of like a validation, a defining moment? Where does that fit into this career journey?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was validation for sure, because I'd done, at that point, by the time I got nominated, it was 17 years in the business. So I was going through kind of a period of time where I was like, it's 17 years already in the business and I haven't gotten to this level. Yeah, well, you're just like, I wanted to be I was transitioning from what my old job, which was production supervisor, which was it's a top level job, but I wanted to be more creative. I wanted to do more stuff. And so I was in a transition period, and for that to happen while I was doing that and for producing was very like, oh wow, this is amazing. So it was very validating. But I have so many moments kind of like that in my career where I'm just like, wow, I can't believe I'm doing this. I shouldn't be doing this, like
I like when you say I shouldn't be doing, that's a version of imposter syndrome that comes in, right?
Oh, for sure. Well, just kind of like, the way I think about it, for example, I got to work in Walt Disney World for 2 years on some Christmas specials. And growing up the way I grew up, kind of like lower middle class, we got to go to Disneyland, but I was never going to go to Disney World. Like we family is not going. We're not going for a trip out to Orlando. It wasn't an option. So when, for example, I got this job to work on that show, and I think it was 2016, it was like, they're paying me to go out there. And so it was a very kind of like full circle moment where I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I've had a lot of those sort of moments where it was something from my childhood where, for example, I grew up watching Star Trek: The Next Generation. Big fan of Star Trek. My dad put me on it when I was a little kid, and I was working on that show for the Academy, the SciTech Awards.
Yes.
And I got to book Patrick Stewart as our host. So, So for me, as somebody who watched him on Star Trek: Next Generation and then eventually X-Men and all that, to be able to say, oh, I did a show where I said, hey, I want this guy as the host, and we book him as the host, and then I get to sit this close to him, and I'm saying, oh, Sir Patrick, and he's like, call me Patrick. And I'm like, okay. And for me, it's one of those things where I'm like, like the imposter syndrome of like, I'm not supposed to be here. Like the people who, come from where I come from are not supposed to be here. And visually, that's what you see too, because like when I'm on set, I'm still one of the only Filipino people you'll see on a set, So I'm constantly kind of in that sort of mind frame, but at the same time, like I get to experience these really cool things, and I'm just like, oh, cool. So winning an Emmy, getting to work with, my heroes, getting to fly to places that I never would have been able to fly to before. Right. So those are the things that like, I get validation, but I'm also just constantly like, this is my dream job, and I love it.
How does it feel that when you say you're one of the few Filipinos in your department or in your space, then you see all these Filipinos coming up in cinema and in music? How does that make you feel?
I mean, now it's great. I mean, it's one of those things where back in the day, we didn't have that. We didn't have anything to look to on the screen that resembled us. It was either you had to look at either shows like The Cosby Show. For me, it was like, oh, that's the only show I could look at where it's like these people look different. Or you would see people like, I'm a big pro wrestling fan, so I used to see Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I'm like, oh, he looks like me,
Yeah.
And so of course Bruce Lee and any sort of Asian martial arts stuff, you're instinctually like, oh, like they look like me, but for the longest time, that wasn't the case. And even up until like the last decade, it still wasn't the case. We only had Rob Schneider. We only had Appleby App, Nicole Scherzinger. And then in the last decade or so, it started blowing up. Oh, Darren Criss, Vanessa Hudgens, Olivia Rodrigo, just more and more and more.
Do you think there's a glass ceiling?
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, I think it's just like, Pandora's box is open now, and I think you're starting to see, like look at our people and the talents they have. We could do it all if we're given the opportunity, right? And so now it's happening, and I'm loving it. I love seeing Bruno Mars out there. I love seeing anybody who'll rep the flag. It does. You don't have to be born there. You don't have to be. As long as you're willing to say, this is part of me, and I'll rep it. So I love that. I love seeing it happen. Batista,
Right?
You know, so many more. I love it. So that's something that in the last couple of years, it's been really exciting to see. So I'm all for it.
How about this? When YouTube came out in 2004, 2005, were you aware of what it was going to be? And the context of this question is you being in the digital space.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if I was aware of what it was going to be. But it definitely was one of those things where when you saw it, you're like, oh, okay, this is a game changer. And
did you think it was a game changer before Google bought them or after Google bought them?
I think I saw. I'm always a big fan of tech, and so whenever I see something new coming, I'm like, oh, like that's interesting. Whether it's a Friendster or a MySpace or whatever, and with YouTube, it was definitely something like, oh, look, you can post your content. Because so for me, you know, I grew up in an environment where you had public access television was the only way to create content and then show it to other people, and you would only get your area.
Yeah.
Right. So people don't, you know, kids nowadays don't really know what that is because
that's like what Wayne's World was.
Exactly. Wayne's World, all those like popular.
They were spoofing public access television.
Yeah. It was just, and it just meant like, okay, people in that area who have that cable service get to watch your show, but it was still somebody. Now, you know, when YouTube came, it was like, okay, I'm going to post this video I recorded at the zoo of a gorilla chasing, you know, a chicken or whatever. And you post it and it can get all of a sudden this recognition. And so when you apply that to, okay, I'm creating content and then you post it and somebody can see it across the world, like that was when it was like, oh my gosh. And it wasn't something that I saw immediately, but I was involved with a couple different people who were kind of early pioneers in that space, and it was like, oh, okay, like, yeah, like there's definitely like space to grow here, and as you can see, it's still.
Were you part of the minority from mainstream television or mainstream production? Were you part of the minority that actually said, we have something here in the digital space? Because I know there was pushback, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's still pushback. I mean, you still see people like who when they look at TikTok, right, and they look at that sort of content, and they're just like, oh, you know, I'm not, because I mean, my Emmy that I was, you know, fortunate enough to win was in that space. The fact that our show was broadcast on Facebook, right?
Right, that's big.
That's big. So like I always look at these things and I'm always like, okay, because this is when radio was the big thing and TV was coming in. You had those people who were from radio like, oh no, you know, this isn't going to be anything, and then of course it became the next thing, right? And then same thing with color, and then, you know, every new thing there's always a little bit of kind of pushback from the traditionalists, the purists. I've never been, you know, really like that. I think the biggest thing I had a problem with in this transfer of kind of from going to digital is people recording with their vertical. You know, like at first I hated it so much. I was like, oh, I just, you know, you could get so much more if you just turn around. You could see everything. But it's just I learned to accept, like, this is organically how people kind of hold their phones. So if they're recording content, okay. And then now, you know, with TikTok and all these platforms, that's the way you watch those things.
And can you imagine, we're actually consuming vertical videos, huh?
Yeah. I mean, again, like, it was something that I hated. I was like, I do not like this, but I've learned to accept it. Like, okay, this is it. And now, of course, I sit on TikTok for, you know, hours on end, just going down these rabbit holes of various algorithm content, you know, depending on what you're into.
Like,
yeah. So,
which is why sometimes, like, I'd see a nice video. I mean, I digress here, but I see a nice video. It's in a different language, right? Like, it's an interesting video. It's a funny video. It's in a different language. Guess what? TikTok's gonna feed me a lot of videos from that language.
Right.
So now I have to
Yeah.
automatically just bring it out, throw it away so
Yeah.
that, he doesn't like it.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny how that works, right? You have to like kind of think about the content you're going to like so you don't. Yeah, it's funny. My wife sends me a lot of, we have a little dog, and so she'll send me lots of Chihuahua videos. And now my algorithm is like all these
Filled with chihuahuas.
animal
Yeah.
videos, which I don't mind, but it's just funny how the algorithm will just grab on and start feeding you
Yep.
content, you know?
So is it just you and your wife? You have kids?
Oh, not yet, but we have a dog who's been with us for a couple of years. So, and then we're working on that next. So,
Now, when you said next, what's next for you? Because there is uncertainty, but there is certainty that you're gonna get something. But how do you chase it? Do you attract it? I mean, what's the mindset?
yeah, I mean, I'm a glass half full person, right? And right now we're dealing with the strike, and I'm confident that this Writers Guild has now finished their strike, and
Done.
now we're finishing up hopefully the SAG strike.
SAG stands for Screen Actors
Screen
Guild.
Actors Guild, yep, and AFTRA, which is their two bodies that combined, and so that's actors, and they've been negotiating now for a week or so. So I think once that's done, like it feels like we're gonna get back into a groove. And for me, it's like I put it out there. I let people know this is what I'm doing. Like, hey, look, I post content. I let people know this is where I'm at. This is the space I'm at. And I believe in the rules of attraction, laws of attraction. I let people know. I have conversations with people, letting them know, that I want to work with them. I have lunches. I do whatever I can to just keep top of mind in front of people sometimes, and then hopefully things start coming my way. I believe in kind of having a mantra and putting positivity out into the world, and then hoping the positivity comes back. So, and it's been working out for me quite well. So I'm gonna keep doing it.
That's the interesting part, because people have a hard time letting go of something they're sure about.
Mm-hmm.
Unbeknownst to them, they're missing out on the opportunities that are passing them by because they're not paying attention to it
Yeah.
for fear. How is your fear level? How is your risk tolerance? And how is your how peaceful is your mind?
Yeah.
And how do you keep it at a level where it's like zen like?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I try. I've been reading a lot lately about Stoicism and trying to not let things affect me. I've always kind of had that sort of mentality, but now it's kind of being labeled as Stoicism, and I enjoy it. I believe in not things you can't control.
Right.
I don't let myself get trapped in that whole thing of being stressed out about that, of being scared of that. I used to like be scared of flying sometimes, and at a certain point I was just like, what am I going to do? There's nothing I can do. So I don't think about those things. I'm confident in myself, in my skill set, in my ability to communicate with people. So I'm not really scared or fearful of things. I will say this, that during the strike, I mean, it got scary. I'm not gonna lie. I was having a lot of conversations. I remember going to see my business manager one day, and I was just like, I don't know what's gonna happen. What's going on? Tell me something good. And he talked me off the ledge. But when things are going and things are going good, I'm confident that my skills will get me where they need to go, and not just the skills I possess from being able to execute, but the skills of communication.
Yes.
And talking with people and making sure the right things need to happen. At least in my industry, like getting things done. That's what a producer is in my mind. You're just getting things done.
Right.
So I'm confident in my skill set as that, so that I'm going to keep being able to keep doing what I want to do.
Okay. This question that I asked you has everything to do with setting up people who want to be following in your footsteps, in your shoes, right? Now, for the person undecided, like let's go to Augie 1.0 who did general ed didn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned a while ago you took a step back, like a semester
Yeah.
off, just to see where you're at and where you want to be.
Yeah.
How important is it not to force things?
Yeah.
Like in your case, did you ever expect that one semester off would change the trajectory of your life?
No, I mean, when you're that young, you like, at least for me, I wasn't thinking like in the macro,
Right.
you're just trying to get by, and I think in speaking with anybody who's trying to like find their passion and find what's going to make them wake up. Like when I wake up in the morning, and I tell this to students when I talk to them, I'm excited. Like it's a new challenge.
You're not like,
I know. I don't dread my job, like, which I know some people, unfortunately, that's their situation,
Yeah.
right? And I feel for them, because luckily for me, I was able to find something that I love doing. And there's still times when it's hard, and today's gonna be hard. But at the same time, I'm not like, I dread this. I love what I do, and so for people trying to get in and people trying to do something that they want to drive them to that, when they wake up in the morning, they go and do it. Like you have to take a step back, and you do have to evaluate like the things in your life that make you happy, the things that you're like, oh yeah, like I want to do this the rest of my life.
That's when you need to be honest with yourself, right?
Yeah, for sure. And like here's the thing. Yeah, you might like something like video games, right? And you're like, oh yeah, I love video games. I want to keep doing this. Great. I mean, you might not be able to find a job video game related right off the top, but like we're in this cool time where it's like you can have a day job, and then when you come home, do your live stream or do something, your side hustle, whatever it is. So if you can't find like your passion job and start working in that space immediately, then at least keep at least trying to identify what that is, right? And so that you have it in the background, so that you can on the weekends be working on that, or so that it's that's still driving you. You just
Like in your case, TV production, and then you mentioned a while ago, you took nothing else, just everything pertaining to TV production. You were hyper focused on it. You were focused on it. When you evaluated yourself to make that decision, did it take a while, or was it on impulse? And then when you were in it, did you have doubts? And maybe this isn't for me. What's going to happen to me afterwards?
Yeah. No.
What was going through your head? And the reason why I want to know this is because these are the things that can help our community really push through with what they want to do with their lives.
Yeah.
In my case, I learned this from people like you sitting on that chair across me. Every guest that came to the studio, they were like, they're doing what they want to do. And here I am going, what the heck am I doing?
Yeah.
So now I like what I do. I'm talking to someone who likes what he does. But the people watching, when you evaluated all of this, was there a moment when you said, shoot, I think I made the wrong decision?
No, I never had that. I never had luckily for me, because when I evaluated, I looked at those little things, like that -1 moment, right? Those things like with my kuya shooting our movies. I looked at those. It was almost like the scene in a movie where I'm just kind of like having this flashbacks of all these scenes that made me happy and smile. And I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. Yeah. Once I started doing it, were there days for sure, like, a couple years in, I remember working on a show where I was leaving at 6 a.m. in the morning.
A couple of years in.
Yeah.
A year is 365 days, 220 something working days, but in your case, probably every day.
Yeah.
So a couple of years in, we're talking about more than 700 days or 1,000 days. That's a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was one of those things where, like, once I got it, it was so exciting when you're doing something new like that.
So
and
you're not counting days.
And not at first. No, at first I'm just like, I remember getting in, it was just so exciting because I was living in West Covina at the time. I moved to Hollywood, so I'm living I got my studio apartment in Hollywood, and I was doing that whole thing, and it was just exciting. It was so exciting. So for me, at the beginning, I wasn't having those like, oh, I made the wrong choice sort of things. I think for the first couple years, it was just like excitement of like, oh, I'm working on the Grammys. Oh, I'm working on the Oscars. Oh, I'm working on. It was just constant like, oh, the Kids' Choice Awards. I used to watch that. So there was never at the beginning, the glamour of it all definitely like had blinders on me. It wasn't until a couple years in when, I'm working on our show and I'm like, oh, we're working, it's like late. We were doing a traveling show. I remember I was doing a traveling show and we were in Chicago or someplace and we never got to leave the hotel because we were working the whole time.
Damn.
And I was like, what's the point of being in this place?
Oh, there you go. Then it came. Okay.
And so I was like, I was having one of those moments where I was just like, oh. But it's good though, because then you identify something that you're like, I don't like this. I don't want to be in this situation. And so I haven't been in that situation again.
I don't like this. I don't want to be in this situation. Other people would say, but I am.
Yeah.
So what was going on through your head when you realized that you didn't want it and you didn't want to be in that situation? How soon did you make a decision to change the trajectory?
It took, so this was like a summer show I was working on. This was 2001, before 9/11 actually. So it was about a year into kind of working full time now. And it was the second leg of, so about 2 months into the show that was going to be about 4 months long. And we'd already done a couple cities and I wasn't happy. I was just, and I ended up saying, hey, I talked to the person who hired me and I just said, this is not, it's funny that I told her, I remember sending her an email or talking to her, I forget exactly what it was, but I remember specifically mentioning mental health at the time. Like this wasn't good for my mental health. And which was funny because 2001,
we were not talking about
that was not a thing, but it was just like, I knew I wasn't happy. I remember just kind of like, they talk about touring and how when you do touring, I'm sure, you've done it. And it's like you're out all the time. It's a different level. You're drinking more. You're participating in things more because you're on location, on the road, right? So I was getting involved in that and I didn't like it. I was like, I don't think I like this. And so I remember telling the person who hired me, I just gave her my 2 weeks notice. And so it was like about, almost 2 years into my career. And I was like my first job that I like walked away from.
You gave your 2 weeks notice, no plan B.
No, there was a plan B because I had already started doing other shows. And so I had other people reaching out to me. And I think at the time, I'd gotten a call to work on, it might have been the Emmys or something else, high level. And I was like, I'll just go do this, So I had the benefit of being able to walk away from that one project, knowing that there was something, a paycheck still out there.
Would you have done it if there was no plan B?
Hard to say. I mean, I think I would say probably no, because if there was no plan B, I still have to get paid. And
but would you have said,
I probably would have just, I don't know. I'm not sure. That's an interesting question, because I was young at the time and maybe I would have just kept going and just pushed through it, because sometimes you just got to push through and you can get through it. What was crazy, what ended up happening was 9/11 happened and then the show got canceled because it was a traveling show and 9/11 happened and everything changed. The world changed. So it's actually better that I had left and gone on to do something else. So it was fine. That's where I'm a firm believer in kind of like destiny and roads lead you going down the right road. And sometimes you make a decision and then that's the decision you have to stick with. And that's the decision I stuck with. And it worked out fine.
Okay. Let's land this for the audience. If there are people listening right now and watching that are at a crossroad or a fork in the road, what could you advise? The road that will give them money but less satisfaction or gratification, or the passion road?
Yeah, I mean, I think there could be a happy medium. It really depends on where that money job, like how much time is that taking from you? Is it a money job where you have your weekends available so you can do your band stuff, or you can do whatever it is, your indie film project, right? If you can have a job that is affording you, a budget to do your little side hustles, your live stream, whatever, then who's to say, maybe that's what you could do, right? Because some people might go down the path of passion but not make any money at all, and be to a point where it's detrimental to their lifestyle, right? I think there's a middle ground somewhere there. It just depends on everybody's situation, so different, But I do believe that you have to find something that drives you, that drives your passion. Whether it's something that can pay you and you can monetize it, or it's something you do as a side hustle that maybe down the road it could be monetized.
Right.
I've seen it happen time and time again where I have friends and colleagues who have built up equity in the social space, and now they're getting sponsorships, and now they're getting brand deals and things of that nature. So I say, if you are lacking something right now in your heart, in your life, that doesn't drive you, you should find what that is. And if there's a way to monetize it, great. Like try to figure out that road, whether it's going to school like I did with Mount Sac, taking classes, learning, making contacts, getting in the industry, or if it's going down the road of being an influencer.
Right.
There's paths that have been created by certain people that you can look at and say, okay, if I do this, I can be successful. And so I just think that you should take some self-reflection, right? Look at the situation and see. And in the end, it's all about execution, because you can look at it and see it and have the ideas. Everybody's got great ideas, right? But are you willing to put in the legwork? Are you willing to, do podcast episodes at the end of your day, your work day? Are you willing to do stuff on your weekend? That's the sort of stuff that'll separate the people who will succeed and then the people who just, talk about it.
This discipline that you have, that you talk about, because you mentioned that everything that you said right now is what you apply in your journey, right? This discipline. How did that high school kid turn out to be you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think a lot of it comes from my parents and my family back home in the Philippines. I was always driven. Luckily for me, because I got to go back to the Philippines. I was balikbayan, and every other year almost we would go back, and so I would see how life was over there. So I was always driven to do good, because I was like, I have an opportunity here, an opportunity that some people don't have. So I need to constantly be pushing. And I saw what my parents went through and the struggles they went through. And, the part of me was like, I need to make good on that. I need to make good on their sacrifices, even if it wasn't directly for me, but it was still like they made sacrifices that allowed me to do stuff that, I'm doing now. So, it was a lot of that, just kind of being driven by the fact that people before me and people that are my family members and that I see on the other side of the world don't have it as good as I have it. So I just had to earn my position that I was, being luckily, presented with, So that was it. I think, it really drove me. My having parents who were driven helped push that as well. So
if they were here now, what would they be telling you?
Oh, I mean, my parents were never, they never shied from telling me how proud they were and letting me know, even though at first it wasn't, the path they wanted me to take. I remember even after, I think, a year of working on award shows, and my mom was still like, so when are you going to nursing school? Are you still going to nursing school? I was like, no, I'm working on the Oscars. Like, I'm working on all these shows. Why would I do that? But, at a certain point, as you start getting more and more accolades, and I remember my mom, posting pictures of me on the Oscars, and they start to, like, you start to see like how much it means to them to have your career be that way. And so, even though both my parents have passed since, like, I know that, like, luckily for me, they always told me how proud they were of what I was doing, and I'm even without them, I still have like my huge family back home. If I post something, like for example, Miss USA, I posted it, I know I'm gonna get like 6, 7, 8 shares
from them,
and just the shares. I mean, likes, but like they're sharing it. They're like, oh, it's my kuya, oh, that's my nephew, oh, and so that always drives me, because I'm like, oh wow, like they look up to me. I have to like, do good by them too. So, I'm fortunate that I have that, because not everybody has a big family. Not everybody has, and not everybody has family that's supportive. So that's where I've been blessed, I think, the most, with having that.
And you acknowledge, you said that's where you feel blessed, having all of those behind you, all of those around you. How important is gratitude in what you do?
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very high up there. It's part of it's part of my mantra of just I thank everybody. When we finished Miss USA, at the end, I went to go find all the crew people and shake their hands. I went to go outside of the building, go to the video truck and shake everybody's hands in there that I could. I'm so appreciative, of people when especially when you're working hard and doing something that's beneficial for me. Like, oh my gosh, thank you. Like, so I'm always grateful for that. I'm grateful for the place I'm at in this world. I think it's important. I think if you don't have that, like it just, for me, it's such a big part of like what I tell people. I'm like, you have to be positive, you have to be appreciative, and that's just, I think it earns you so much goodwill too, as well. Not that that's something that you're like trying to bank into your back pocket, but people see when you act that way, like they will treat you in a certain way too, and so do unto others, right? And so I thank people because I'd like to be thanked. If I do something good or work hard for somebody, I'd love for them to thank me. So it's just do unto others, right?
Well, this is my thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Augie Max.
Thank you. Salamat, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. What an inspiration, guys. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, put your comments, send some message of love to our dear friend, Mr. Augie Max.